Welcome to Air Conditioning Contractors of America Manual D Speed Sheet Primer. This is a Manual D Speed Sheet, and the view that we're looking at is the one you get when you click on the Effective Length tab. However, we're going to look first at the Welcome and the Help tabs because you really need to look at them first and know what's on them before you start on a Manual D Speed Sheet. Big guy in the back saying, "Where's the tabs?" Well, if you look along the bottom of the sheet, you're going to see that the tabs are all there, and the first tab on the left is the Welcome tab. And if you click on the Welcome tab, it's going to open up the Welcome sheet. I'm now going to read the Welcome page. Welcome to the electronic spreadsheet version of ACCA Manual D, 3rd edition, D3, Residential Duct Systems, 2008. A thorough understanding of the D3 manual as well as a working knowledge of Microsoft Excel are prerequisites for using this spreadsheet. The spreadsheet uses revised versions of the printed D3 worksheets. Use the printed D3 manual for guidance to enter information into the effective length, friction rate, and duct sizing tabs. Microsoft Excel version 97 is the minimum requirement to use the spreadsheet, but Microsoft Excel version 2000 or greater is recommended to utilize the full features of the spreadsheet. We strongly suggest that you print out and read the instructions on using the electronic spreadsheet that are contained in the following Help tab. The spreadsheet can be downloaded from the ACCA System Design website, ACCA System Design, or www.acca.org/speedsheet. Please visit the website often to check for updates to the speed sheet. The most recent version number is listed on the Notes tab. When you click on the Help tab, this is what pops up, and we're going to look at the steps individually, but it's pretty much a 3-step system. 1, 2, 3. It's easy as 1, 2, 3. Hey, wait a minute. My singing really stinks. I'm not going to make you suffer anymore. I'm sorry about that. I got carried away by this 3-step thing. Refer to Manual D Residential Duct Systems, 3rd edition, version 1, XX. Well, we're really on version 2.0 now, but the sheet's still good for the 2.0. So step 1, go to the Effective Length tab, and that's the Effective Length tab, and enter up to 4 supply runs to determine the longest equivalent run in the system. Hold on, we're going to look at the sheet in a second, so just let me finish reading this one and we'll get on to that. Enter the linear feet of trunk and run-out ducts in the length sections for the supply ducts. Click on the code group, or the group code, and find the equivalent length for all the fittings used in the selected supply runs, and the group code is the G1, G2, G3. It's the red ones over there on the right. You can list multiple group code letters separated by a comma and enter the total effective length for all fittings. The program will automatically select the total equivalent feet to be used in the friction rate tab, and then you repeat this whole process for the return ducts. If you're a little confused by all of what I just said, let's go back to the first thing I said, which is click on the tab. Okay, we're going to click on the Effective Length tab, and then that's what pops up is what we're looking at right now is the sheet, and the sheet pops up, and we're going to fill in this sheet, and when we fill in the sheet, it's going to give us the answer, and that's pretty much what I was saying, but we're going to now talk about the details of it, and so you'll understand when I'm talking group numbers. If you look at the blue on the left there, all the blue numbers, let me circle this in the red and top, and you got group 1 through group 12, and that's for the supply. The bottom part of the sheet's for the return. We're going to fill it out too. We're going to fill it all out, and you're going to know how to do it when we get done. Well, before we can start, we need to have something to start with. So let's start with this house, and we're going to do this duct design for this house. And we've got this sketch of how the diffusers run. We got 11 diffusers there, and we've got some runs here, and we've got an air handler unit. Let's take a look at it. That's the air handler unit. That's where the furnace or whatever it is in this unit is going to be putting out our air. And let's say that number 1 looks like it's about as far away as you can go. 4 is pretty far away. 8's pretty far away down here in the bottom right, and 11's pretty far away. So we're going to pick those as the possible 4 longest runs. It could be 9, but I'm thinking 8's going the wrong way. Why not pick it? It's not going to be much longer for 9. Looks like it's a little shorter on the flex duct. Here's the top portion of our sheet, and we've filled in for the straight run on the top the 1, the 4, the 8, and the 11, which were those diffusers that I picked out. Now, up here, some people will put in dining room, bedroom, bathroom, whatever they want to put in for those numbers. But I like using the numbers of the diffusers because that's easier for me to understand and less writing, and so that's a winner for me. And then you put the trunk lengths going to it now. In the first one, number 1, we've got 3 main trunks going down there, 3, 8, and 12. We've got 3, 15, and 10 going to 4. We've got 3, 47, and 10 going to 8. We got 3, 43, 43 and 12 going to 11. If you had more than 4 lengths of main trunk going to the unit, then you could add them together and put them in here and still fit them into 4 places. What do we want to look at next? Well, the next thing we're going to look at is the group numbers, and the group numbers are 1 through 12 down here. And what's a group thing? That's a 90 or a T or something like that. And other is anything else that's in there, like a sound attenuator. Anything you might have in there would go into the other column. Let's take a look at this. These are two main trunks here. We've got the green on the right, we got the red on the left. The blue, don't let it confuse you. I just use that because I can use colors on this thing, but that designates where the flex duct is. If we look at the left one as an example, let's look at the left one because it's quicker and easier. We're going to go out here and we're going to say we got the unit, and there's a takeoff from the unit that goes out to the first T, and that's common to both of the trunks. And then we've got the T, that's common to both of the trunks. And then we've got another T and another length that's going over here on the red side, and that's only for the red side. And then we've got the other branch that goes just to diffuser 1, and it's only for diffuser 1. And then we look at all the fittings that are in there, and we're going to have to mark them down and figure out what they are. And then we add all this up, and I'm going to show you how that all works next. If you click on the Group 1 fitting, then what's going to happen is it's going to take you to the Group 1 pages, and you're going to look through all the fittings in Group 1. And in Group 1, the fittings are all the takeoffs for the supplies, and you pick out the one that looks like what you put in. We go to the sheets and we pick out an equivalent length for the type of transition that we're going to put on top of our unit, and in this case it's a 1N, and that's the number that designates what type we picked out. So if you have to look back in the book and see what it is to check it and see if it's right, you can look at it, and then it's got an equivalent or effective length of 15. We now click back on the effective length tab and go back to our other sheet. We can then put our 1N under the group letters, and we put the 15 under effective length. Interestingly enough, we can do this all the way across because we have the same thing on each one of our 4 runs. Alright, I just popped them all in there. And something I talked about earlier, I said when we add them up, well, I was really kind of lying. We're not going to add anything up. This machine adds it up for you. So if you take a look down here at the bottom, you'll see that it's adding up all the effective lengths. And we also see that 75 is a winner. Now, if you look in the bottom left-hand corner, it's got design, total equivalent length, and the machine automatically will pick out the biggest one and say, that's your design, total equivalent length. Now, if we quit right now, we would have the wrong answer because we haven't filled in all of the fittings that we have, but it would still give you an answer. So if you got to be careful that you fill everything in and you get everything filled in correctly on this, or you're going to get bogus answers, and you don't want that because you're going to have a design that doesn't work. Well, I went in and I filled everything in here. I've got the 2 P's in, I got the 4 K's in, I got the 9 P's, and they're all different types of fittings. You can look them up in your manual D. And they're in our system. And I get a total answer down here of 250, and that's from number 8.
Wait a minute. You got different answers for 2P. You got a 2P3, a 2P4, 2P5. What are you doing there?
Well, let me show you. The 2P3 is 65, and the 2P4 is 70. And we need to look at that. Let's stop and take a look at that and see what's going on. We click on Group 2, and we come down and we find 2P, and then we read the directions. That's always a good thing to do, isn't it? Number of downstream branches to end of trunk duct, or number of downstream branches to a trunk reducer. And so we're adding these up. If there's a reducer, then these are before the reducer, and we don't have any reducers in our trunk, so it's just the total number of them in this case. Now, if we look at this, it's got fitting numbers, and 0 is 50. So effective or equivalent length is for 0 is 50. And if we go all the way to the right, 5 or more is 75. And in the middle is in the middle. And it's just that simple. So we looked up and counted what was there and came up with our numbers. I've colored in the return ducts in yellow here because we're going to do the return ducts next. Now, on the registers themselves, on most drawings, it's a standard procedure to put a 1 line across a return and an X across a supply so that you can tell just by looking at them whether the supply is a return. You can also follow the trunks back. Now, the coloring in is option that one guy I knew loved to color everything in, and he colored it all in so everybody could see the ducts and know what they were based on the colors, and that worked really good until he ran into a colorblind guy. Enough of this digression, which means to say that I've wandered off on the tangent here talking about X-bosses and coloring stuff. We go back to the effective length worksheet, and we've already filled out the top half, so we're now going to look at the bottom half, which is return ducts. I grabbed the bottom part of the friction rate sheet off of the page and blew it up, and we're going to do the same type of stuff for it. There's only 4 return duct runs, so that's pretty simple. We're going to fill them in. Then we're going to fill in the lengths for each of those runs. Then we're going to get any group numbers or any fittings that are on those runs or any other stuff and fill that in. And then that's going to give us our total equivalent length. Boom, we're done. It's just that quick. Well, it's almost that quick. We got 4 of them, and there's only 4 returns, so we get to put them all on here. And it would have been obvious anyway, because we got one that's 5 feet and one's 10 feet, and they all have the same fittings. So theoretically, we only would have had to do number 4 and put that down in here, and we'd have got the right answer at 155. But I went ahead and did my homework and did every one of them, so I should get a C+ at least. And the final answer is 155. We are now moving on to step 2. Go to the friction rate tab and enter the external static pressure for the selected equipment. Enter the heating CFM and the fan speed, the cooling CFM and the fan speed, and next enter component pressure losses for all the components and accessories external of the fan unit. The program will automatically calculate the design friction rate value to be used for duct sizing. Well, let's see now. Friction rate tab. That's that green tab right there. And we're going to click on that and see what happens. Voila, we have a sheet. Let's read the notes, because I like reading the notes because they're important, because if you don't read the notes, then eventually they'll come back and bite you. And let's see how this one's going to bite us if we don't know something that's written in there. 0 component pressure losses will result in an error. If the calculated friction rate is below 0.02, the fan may not deliver the required CFM. Increase the blower speed, increase the blower size, or decrease the total effective length. Okay, so if we put a 0 in here, it's going to spaz out the machine. It's not going to give us an answer. If it's below 0.02, we probably may not have enough airflow. So we got a problem, and we're going to need to fix something. If the calculated friction rate is above 0.18, the fan may deliver too much CFM, so we need to decrease the blower speed, decrease the blower size, or increase the total effective length. So we got some rules of thumb there. If it's below 0.02, we need to increase the speed. If it's above 0.18, we need to decrease the speed or change something else. Next, we're going to take a look at this, and we're going to blow up this sheet, and we're going to look at it closer so we can see it. Well, this looks pretty good for a sheet that blew up, doesn't it? We're going to do the external static pressure. That's the first number that we want to stick in here, and we're going to put in 0.5. 0.5 is for a heat pump, and it includes the coil. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to stick in our CFM values for our heat pump, and it's 1100 and 1040 on cooling, and our speeds are medium and high. Wait a minute. How come it's got a higher speed and a lower CFM on cooling? Well, that's a good question. Man, I get some great questions in this class. 1040 is the cooling one, and that's because it's on a wet coil. And the wet coil has enough resistance that it decreases the amount of air, even though it's on high speed, down to 1040. Next, we're going to fill in our electric resistance heating coil, and that's 0.02. Now, look up above there. There's a line for direct expansion refrigerant coil. Now, since it's a heat pump unit, that's included in the external static pressure from the manufacturer. If it was a furnace, it would not be, because the delivered box, the external static pressure is measured across the box. And so you're going to need to be careful when you find out what the external static pressure is, that you make sure that anything that's not included in that manufacturer ESP is included in this step 2 list down here. What else do we have? Well, let's see, they don't have a humidifier, so we're going to add that. They don't have a supply outlet, so we're going to add that. Return grill, add that. Balancing damper, we're going to add that. And then, boom, it gives us our total answers. The total component loss is 0.145, and the available static pressure is 0.355, and our total effective length from adding our supply and returns up for their total is 405, and that does, through the magic of the computer here, a calculation, and it comes up with our friction rate design value of 0.09 in inches of water column per 100 feet. So that's what we use to design our duct sizes. All right, here's the final step 3 that we're going to do, and this is where I read it to you and confuse you, and then I show you exactly what it means when we fill out the sheet. And the directions are pretty simple. When you go back after you fill out the sheet and read them, they make a lot of sense. Go to the Duct Sizing tab and enter the heating and cooling BTUs per hour for each supply run. There is a maximum of 20 supply runs per unit. For larger rooms, divide the BTUs per hour by the number of runs required for the proper distribution of airflow. The program will automatically select the duct size for round metal ductwork. For rectangular metal ductwork, enter the height, and the program will automatically select the duct size. If the flex duct is used, refer to the equivalent flex column to select the correct duct size. Under the supply trunk, return trunk, and return trunk sections, select the associated supply runs, and the CFM and duct sizes will automatically calculate. The program will automatically select the duct size for round metal ductwork. For rectangular metal duct, enter the height, and the program will automatically select the duct size. For flex duct, if used, refer to the equivalent flex column to select the correct duct size. Well, that's really pretty simple, and we're going to show you. When you click on the duct sizing, this is the sheet that's going to pop up, and we're going to focus on the top part of the sheet to begin with. Let's take a walk down memory lane and remember that we have 13 diffusers total in this thing, and since we can put 20 on the speed sheet, we don't need a second speed sheet, so we can do it all on one speed sheet in the 20 slots that are provided. Here are 20 slots, and we got SR1 through SR20, and that's supply run, and that's what it stands for. And then it's got room ID. Now for room ID, that's where I'm going to put my diffuser. I'm going to put a diffuser ID. You can put whatever you want in there. And then we have 2 columns here for heating BTU and cooling BTU, which we're going to fill in. And then if you look over to the right, there's all kind of blue stuff here that just says pound number, pound number. And if we've got all our other sections filled out properly, it's going to give us answers in there in just a second when we fill it in. See how quick and easy that fills in? Pow, it's there. And see all the blue in there, the blue all fills out, and it gives you some sizes in there, and for flex and for the final size, the cooling CFM and design CFM and heating CFM. Where do the CFMs come from? Any ideas? Well, the answer is they came from those values that we entered based it on the manufacturer's numbers. So the 1,100 and the 1,040, that's where those values came from. How about the heating and cooling BTUs? They came from the Manual J. Now the Manual J gives you the heating and cooling requirements for each room. It doesn't break it down like in the case of the 4 and 5 diffusers, which there's 2 diffusers in one room there. So we had to divide that room in half, and we're going to give half to each of the 2 diffusers, and that's what we're going to use. And other than that, everything's fairly simple. So if we look in this box here, there's 4 and 5, and we've got 2560. We divided it in half. Each one of them is getting 2560 for heating and 2548 for cooling. And so the heating and cooling BTUs, we entered them all in. We entered in the room IDs, and the blue stuff filled out for us, including our final size for our duct, and our equivalent for flex is filled out already. However, we don't have it filled out for the height and width if we're doing some rectangular. So we need to put in the height. Now, why would you have it different? Say for instance, we got a 9-inch round, and we've only got 4 inches of ceiling area. We might want to put 4-inch in there for our height, and then we would have the height and width that would be equivalent to the 9-inch round. And that's what that column's for. Let's go ahead and slap one in there. We put 8 in there, and we got 8 by 8 for the first one, equivalent to a 9-inch round. The other thing I want to talk about on this sheet is the design CFM. That's not the balancing CFM. That's not what you balance to when you balance a system, because it's rounded up number. It's based on the bigger of the 2, and so you'll never have that much air in a system, and so you can't use that for that. That's just a design for duct calculations. It's not a design value for balancing. For balancing, you got to pick the heating or the cooling, and in this case, it looks to me like you can easily get within 15% of design and meet the quality installation requirements of 20% by balancing the system, and you can put it between the values. Like for instance, so if you look at SR8, you have 78 and 100. So you can get within 20% of both of those by putting it in the middle. So if you had 90, you'd be in the middle, and you'd be within 20%, and you meet the QI requirement. Or if you decided that it needed more cooling, you could just balance it to the 100 for the cooling, The bottom line here is that when you're balancing, use common sense and balance to the heating or the cooling and mark down what you had, and you'll usually do okay. If you come back later because there's a complaint one room's not running right in the summer or the winter, then you probably need zoning anyway. As you'll recall in our drawing, we had two main trunks and then we had our return trunks. We had 4 of them. So we're going to look at the bottom part of our sheet here that takes into account the whole trunks, and it looks at everything that's on each of the trunk to get our totals to figure out what size duct we need for the main branches. Remember when we started with this sheet, we circled the top and then we blew it up and then we filled it in? Well, now we're going to circle the bottom and we're going to blow it up and we're going to fill it in. This is not too hard to do. This time we're just checking boxes, as I said. Now the thing to think about here is we've got associated supply runs is in the top left corner here, and we got ST1 and ST2. That's supply trunk 1 and supply trunk 2, which are the 2 we have. And then we've got 1 through 20. So we're just going to simply take supply trunk 1 and check all the 1 through 20, which is our numbers for our diffusers. See how it's easier using diffusers when you use this sheet? At any rate, we've got diffusers 1 through 13, and so we wouldn't expect to see any numbers 14 through 20 on any of these, all the way down. Now the numbers go straight down the column. So the first one is supply trunk. The second one is return registers. And so it tells you where the return registers are and what associated supply trunks they're on. And it needs those to add up the pressures and to know what's going on to size them properly. And then we've got return trunk, which is the main big fat trunks. And that's what this is. We're looking for all of the registers add up to a certain amount of air, and then you need a supply trunk that can supply all those registers. And so that's what this calculation is doing. Let's just look at one and then look at it filled out. As we look at this, it's a little confusing, but it's not too hard to do. If we look at supply trunk 1, if you recall, that was the red one on the left side. Supply trunk 2 was the one on the right. That's the green one, and those are the top 2 rows going across. And then we have above them, we have 1 through 20, and those would be the registers. And the registers, we don't expect any numbers above 13 because we only have 13 registers. Now supply trunk 1 has the supply registers of 1, 4, and 5 on it. Now if you go across to the right, once you click on those, it automatically fills in all the blue all the way across. I added 8 inches so I could figure out what the equivalent rectangular would be, although we're going to do everything on the final drawing in round. And it comes out to 12-inch round is what you need for that supply trunk, the main trunk, for all those diffusers. The same with ST2, supply trunk 2. You just check the boxes and it does the math for you. And unless you're doing if you don't even need to fill in the yellow blank, it'll just work without that if you're not going to do rectangular. So if you're not doing rectangular, you can ignore that one. That column can remain blank. Now we go down here next. We got to figure out what the return registers are. We don't have any idea what the branch that runs to the return register is, but we're going to figure it out based on the supply size. And based on the supply size, it'll do the math for us. And how do we know the supply size? Well, we just check the boxes. So return register 1 serves 1, 2, and 3. Return register 3 serves 4 and 5. Return register 2 serves 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and return register 4 just simply serves number 7. So when you look at those, it gives you all the design CFMs, it gives you the round size, it gives you the velocity, and then it gives you the final size, and then it gives you the flex equivalents over here. So the returns are in flex, so we're probably going to want to use flex. Now, when we get down to the bottom, we got the associated supply runs with the return trunks. So this is for the big trunk. This is for the whole bigger part of the trunk. First we have the return registers. That's the part that goes to the trunk. And now we're doing the trunks. And we've got 2 return trunks, 2 main trunks that go in together. And on the first one, we've got 1, 2, and 3. And that's going to be 10 inches of final size. If it's flex, it'd be 12 inch. And the bottom one is return trunk 2, and it's got all the other ones on it, and it's going to be a equivalent flex length of 16 diameter. So that would be 14 if you were doing galvanized, but since we're using flex, you have to use a 16. We're now done. We got the whole thing filled out. We got a design. It includes all of our duct sizes for each of our diffusers. It includes all of our fittings. If we look at our other sheet, we could use this to price out the job because we've got our fittings listed on one. We can just figure out how many of each one of them we have on each run and add them up and figure out a cost for the whole job and figure out how long it's going to take one of our guys to install it. And if you're like me, then you double it because you're not very good at it and it takes you longer. But at any rate, the bottom line is, with this sheet, you're finished and you've done your manual speed sheet. Just for my own peace of mind, I like to go back to the original drawing and put all of the duct sizes on there and put down where they go, and then I can identify the fittings too if I want to. If I'm going to have somebody else do the install, then that's what I want to do. I want to have a drawing for them so they know what to do, and it can be just a pencil drawing like this that shows you where everything goes and what size it is, and it makes it a slam dunk simple for the guy doing the installation. In this case, I decided to do the return duct on a separate sheet because the sheets weren't very big. If they're bigger sheets, it'll fit on there pretty well. This concludes Manual Speed Sheet Primer, and you should be able to now fill out a Manual Speed Sheet completely, and you should understand all the little things that you need to know in order to do it.